I never imagined, not even in my wildest dreams, that after just finishing my wife Willow's funeral, I'd return home only to see her standing there again. Turns out, the one who had actually died was her twin sister, Alicia. Willow had faked her death, abandoning both me and her career, all so she could finally be with the men she had secretly loved for years, her own brother-in-law. Right then and there, I picked up the phone and dialed home. Mom, Dad, I've decided to accept the family-arranged remarriage, and that's not all. I immediately handed over Willow's years of research to her academic rival as a gift. When Willow heard this, she completely lost it and started screaming at me, calling me a jerk, but I just smiled and asked her calmly, "And who exactly are you to interfere in my life?" Chapter 1. The devastating news of Willow's death came while I was still at home, waiting for her to return. The moment my phone slipped from my hand and hit the floor, it felt like my whole world collapsed with it. On the day of the burial, I looked down at the woman I loved so deeply one last time and murmured, "Willow." No reply ever came again. I lowered my head to hide the grief on my face, only to notice my ring finger was bare. The wedding ring was gone. I rushed back home to look for it, but instead, I unexpectedly ran into Willow's sister, eyes bloodshot. I stared unblinking at Alicia's familiar face. As twins, she and Willow looked exactly alike, but Willow never walked with such carefree liveliness. My wife was gone. I hadn't even taken proper care of her, and now I'd lost our wedding ring too. An ache spread relentlessly through my chest. I closed my eyes in anguish. When I opened them again, Alicia was bending down to pick something off the floor. Just then, I caught a glimpse of a small mark behind her ear. A tiny round scar, just like the one that came from a mole. My pupils dilated, and my breath caught in my throat. Willow had a mole behind her ear. I used to caress it all the time in our most intimate moments, but Alicia never had that mole. Was I imagining things? Before I could confirm it, she turned and walked into another room, her face hidden from view. Doubt twisted tighter in my mind. My lips trembled as I quietly followed. Then I heard someone ask her, "Even though both of you are scientists, your fields are different. Are you sure you can handle the change?" Alicia, no. Willow had already returned to her usual aloof and composed self as she replied, "It won't be a problem." That look, it was the same one I'd cherished for 6 years. There was no mistaking her. My entire body shook with excitement. The joy of having her back alive filled every corner of my heart, and my lips curled into a smile. But if Willow wasn't dead, then the one lying in that frozen coffin had to be Alicia. Why would she do this? I stepped forward, but a single sentence froze me in place. I've loved Makoto wholeheartedly for so many years. Now that I finally have a chance to be with him, I'm not letting go. Makoto, Alicia's husband, Willow's brother-in-law. She gently touched her stomach. A rare softness filled her usually cold expression. "I'll give him a child. I'll stay with him for the rest of his life." Standing hidden in the corner, I heard every word. My body went numb with disbelief. My face drained of color. "Makoto was your crush. I'm honestly happy it worked out for you. But, what if George finds out? He's an idiot," she said with a laugh. 6 years together, and he never even noticed I never loved him. You really think he'd figure it out now? My fists clenched. I could feel the blood in my body boiling in reverse, surging with rage. All I could see was Willow's cold, emotionless face. So it wasn't that she didn't want kids, she just didn't want them with me. She only wanted children with Makoto. It wasn't that work kept her too busy, it's that she never once thought about spending her life with me. For Makoto, she willingly turned herself into someone else. I could taste the bitterness of blood in my mouth, straightening my spine. I turned and walked away without a shred of hesitation. Looking back now, the signs were all there. Every moment I felt overlooked. Every time she didn't seem to care. How could I not question whether we were truly in love? I just didn't want to face it back then. I made a call. "Hey, Dad, about what you said the other day, about the family-arranged remarriage." "I'm saying yes." On the other end, he replied, "You've come around. Huh? Your mom and I have been looking into potential matches. Look, with everything that happened with Willow, some things are just fate. You need to learn to let go. Let go. She's not even dead." This gut-wrenching pain, the last time I felt anything like it was when I thought Willow had died days ago. I let out a cold, bitter smile. Days of numb, mindless grief, and in the end, it was all a lie. "You two can start checking now. If there's someone suitable, I'll meet them." We chatted for a few more minutes before I hung up. Willow, her hair in a braided ponytail, was standing nearby. Who knows how much of the conversation she had heard. Our eyes met. She curved her lips into a smile. "Calling your family?" I gave her a curt nod, my gaze utterly devoid of warmth. Silence began to settle between us. For a moment, Willow almost couldn't maintain the expression on her face. Right now, she was Alicia. Distantness was expected, suppressing the strange pang rising in her heart. She turned to leave for the front hall. Makoto was in the front hall. Naturally, she would want to be with the men she loved. We never took a wedding photo. I said, my voice calm on the surface, but with a storm brewing beneath. Willow had promised we'd take one, but she never found the time. Thinking back, it was true. Right after our wedding, we were thrown into a whirlwind. Her research lab hit serious roadblocks, and she was overwhelmed. I used my father's connections and stayed up day and night helping her gather the information she needed. Eventually, things settled down, but I ended up hospitalized. Out of guilt, Willow had once suggested we take that wedding photo. She knew how much I wanted it, but because the relationship didn't mean that much to her, she quickly tossed the idea aside again. Years passed, and still, no wedding photo. I asked, can you take one with me, in Willow's place? A wedding photo, pretending to be Willow and taking one with me. That would mean standing beside someone else as a bride. Makoto wouldn't be happy about that, but the memory of me lying pale in that hospital bed was still vivid. A sense of guilt flickered in her eyes, guilt for deceiving me, for betraying me. I asked again, can you? Not even pretending to be Willow, not even then. Are you willing to take one photo with me? I clenched my teeth hard. It felt like someone had dumped a bucket of ice water into my chest. The atmosphere was frozen in place. Then, without warning, Makoto's voice cut through the air. What are you two talking about? Chapter 2. A spark of joy lit up in Willow's eyes. She gave a genuine smile and ran forward to link her arm with Makoto's. In the past, all she could do was watch as her sister and Makoto walked side by side, inseparable. Now, she was the one who would be with him. How could she not be thrilled? Noticing my gaze, Willow pressed her lips together uneasily. George said, he wants me to pretend to be my sister and take a wedding photo with him. One that Willow never got to take. At that, Makoto's brow furrowed in discomfort. He gave a gentle but firm refusal. A wedding photo shouldn't be taken by someone else in her place. Hearing the disapproval in his voice, the balance in Willow's heart quickly tilted. Angering Makoto, for me, wasn't worth it. With that thought, she prepared to take Makoto's side. Of course I know it's inappropriate, she said softly, but I had already seen through the shift in her thoughts. I looked her directly in the eyes, speaking with calm regret, but Willow promised me, herself. It all happened so suddenly. I'm sure even in the afterlife, she would pity me, a husband who's been married for 6 years and doesn't even have a single proper wedding photo. We held eye contact for barely a second before Willow quickly looked away and turned to Makoto. She tried to keep calm, but her unease was written all over her face. Her fingers fidgeted with the hem of her sleeve. She's gone. Why bother with a fake wedding photo now? She said, her tone far less decisive than before. Willow sighed, then tentatively asked, Makoto, my sister's death really hit George hard. Maybe we should just agree. You think so? He replied, clearly surprised. Realizing his reaction, Willow instinctively shook her head. No, of course not. What you want matters most to me. That cautious look in her eyes, it was eerily similar to how I once offered up my whole heart to Willow. I almost laughed at how blind I'd been back then. Feigning sorrow, I said, it doesn't have to be anything extravagant. Just a single click of the shutter. Willow never liked photos anyway. This one's just for me, something to remember her by. I wore an expression full of grief, eyes filled with longing. Anyone watching would be moved by the depth of my love. Makoto's jaw twitched, and his frown deepened. Willow, standing silently beside him, couldn't help recalling the men in the hospital bed, how a single kind word from her had once made him beam with joy. And now, there was nothing but contrast between then and now. She hesitated, then tried again. Makoto, I think, do whatever you want. He cut her off coldly, turning his head away. Of course he knew what Alicia meant, she was too soft-hearted, but this was a wedding photo, not just any picture. Great, so you agree. I sealed the deal with a light smile. Thanks, sis. Thanks, brother-in-law. When I visit the temple to burn incense for Willow, I'll definitely pray for your long and happy life together. Willow froze, not just because I called him brother-in-law, but because of the genuine smile on my face. She hadn't seen me smile in days. Since seeing her corpse, I had been nothing but a broken shell of grief. This sudden smile caught her completely off guard. The rejection that had reached her throat got stuck halfway. Makoto, who'd been waiting for Willow to say no, heard nothing. His frustration only deepened. She was worrying about George's feelings, but not his. Fine then, do whatever you want, Makoto snapped, eyes clouded with hurt, as if he were the one being wronged. Makoto, wait. He stormed off, and Willow panicked, instantly regretting her hesitation. Makoto had clearly opposed the idea, so why had she wavered? Why had she complicated everything? George never really mattered to her anyway. Makoto, please wait. She hurried after him, leaving me standing there alone. One after another, they both disappeared like a gust of wind, rushed, flustered, and fleeting. I looked down at the wedding ring I'd finally found again. My gaze turned dark and unreadable. I told myself I was ready to let go, but after loving her for so long, how could I not still feel hurt, seeing her like that? Chapter 3. Back in the bedroom, A message popped up on my phone. It was a voice note from my dad. He said they'd already found a suitable candidate for the family-arranged marriage. His voice was full of praise, and I could hear my mom chiming in excitedly in the background. Their satisfaction was obvious. I replied briefly, then pulled out my suitcase and started packing. Once the wedding photo was taken, I'd go home and get married. At least it would please my parents, and it couldn't possibly be worse than this mess. After folding my clothes, I opened the drawers and began sorting through them one by one. A gray-blue box lay exposed to the air, and my hand suddenly froze. The reagent inside had taken me a great deal of effort to obtain. It was meant to be a gift for Willow, something that could significantly boost her research project. Bee-boo, bee-boo, bee-boo. The sound of an ambulance siren pulled me out of my thoughts. I walked over to the window. Chaos reigned downstairs. Willow was curled up, clutching her abdomen, being loaded onto a stretcher by medics. What happened? Bang. The bedroom door flew open. Makoto burst in, out of breath, and grabbed me without giving me a chance to speak. Come with me, now. Over the past few days, I had been dealing with Willow's funeral and weighed down by grief. I was exhausted, and he pulled me so forcefully that I couldn't break free. The chairs in the hospital waiting area were cold and metallic. We had barely sat down when Makoto dragged me off again, this time to the left wing. I followed blindly for a few minutes, and it wasn't until a nurse was about to insert a needle that I realized. No wonder he brought me. He was using me as a walking blood bank. Willow had a rare blood type. I'd once been genuinely happy when we found out we shared the same one. Straightening my wrinkled shirt, I forced the words out. I'm not donating blood. You know, my health hasn't been good. After these few days of stress, if I give blood now, I'll end up in a hospital bed myself. It's for Alicia. She's hemorrhaging internally. I'm begging you. Makoto pleaded, but his eyes were laced with hostility. I dodged his reaching hand and repeated, I said I can't. You know her blood type is rare. If the hospital had other options, would I even be here asking you? George, if you had a shred of decency, you'd cooperate. Still upset about the wedding photo situation, Makoto's patience snapped. His tone was far from his usual composed self. With a scowl, he suddenly shoved me hard. Hurry up. I stumbled a few steps, catching myself on a nearby table. The doctor's voice echoed in my mind. Young people need to take care. Sex that rough can cause a corpus luteum rupture. She's bleeding out. Rough sex. How rough must it have been? Back when we were together, even touching her required me to ask carefully every time. I closed my eyes, forcing myself to swallow the pain. Now that I understood what happened, I stopped listening to the conversation. I didn't want to hear it anymore. I already said, I won't donate. A few nurses glanced over. Makoto, feigning sorrow, lowered his voice and said, in that case, the wedding photo I promised you, forget it. He was threatening me. I looked at his face in disbelief. This was the man Willow had been obsessed with all these years. I let out a long sigh, but I still said yes, no matter what. I had to take that photo. This marriage already had enough regrets. My pride wouldn't allow it to end without even a proper wedding picture. I watched the needle pierce my vein. Makoto folded his arms, satisfied. Alicia had been right. He used this as leverage, and I agreed just as she predicted. 2 full bags of blood later, Makoto rushed back to the ward. A nurse handed me a glucose drink. I sat down to rest. My head was spinning, but there was no need to stay hospitalized. I downed the glucose and left the hospital, calling a cab home. The packing was still incomplete. I forced myself to focus and went back to work, moving back and forth as I organized everything. About half an hour later, my phone rang. Hello, this is your pickup driver. I'm at the address you provided. Could you please bring the package out? The gray-blue gift box was carefully wrapped layer by layer. Dusk had fallen. Leaning against the doorframe, I watched silently as the delivery guy disappeared into the evening. By tomorrow evening at the latest, the reagent would be in the hands of Willow's greatest rival. I still loved her, but I couldn't tolerate her betrayal. Not taking back the privileges I gave her, publicly and privately, was already the last bit of dignity I could afford her. Chapter 4. At 9:30 the next morning, sunlight streamed through the window and fell across the bedroom floor. The room felt empty. A black suitcase sat quietly in the corner near the wardrobe. I'd slept in late, and had just stepped out of the bedroom when I heard frantic voices from the living room. Alicia, what do I do? You have to help me. How did they even find me? I swear, it was just a tiny lapse in focus while driving yesterday, just a second, and then I hit someone. Maybe offer them some money. The guy seemed totally fine to me, didn't look injured at all. Willow stood behind the couch, gently massaging Makoto's temples. Her hands were clumsy and inexperienced. After a few seconds, Makoto waved her off impatiently. Where the hell did you learn to do that? He sighed heavily, fingers tapping anxiously against the sofa. You know the company's about to announce the award list. I can't afford a scandal right now. He hadn't dared stop after the accident yesterday. He was terrified the victim would go to the police. This award was everything. He couldn't have any blemishes on his record. Willow pulled her hand back. She had learned that move from me. I used to like massaging my own temples to relieve stress. Speak of the devil. Noticing me walk into the kitchen from the corner of her eye, Willow leaned in to whisper something into Makoto's ear. There were frozen dumplings in the fridge. I didn't feel like cooking them properly, so I just threw some into a bowl and put it in the microwave. A few minutes later, holding the steaming dumplings, I walked to the table, only to be greeted by a group of people. Makoto, Willow, and two burly strangers I had never seen before. An ominous feeling punched me in the gut. It's him. That's the car. And that's the guy who was driving. Just now I asked around and found out it was him who hit someone yesterday. Alicia's, no. Willow's, face was twisted in exaggerated outrage. For a moment, I almost thought she had returned to her original identity. The false accusation hit me before I could react. In a flash, the dumplings were snatched from my hands and hurled at my face. Scalding hot, they burned on contact. I cried out in pain, but Willow only chuckled. Then came the words that chilled me to the bone. Look at his build. Isn't it exactly like the guy who hit you yesterday? I'm his sister, and I never thought he'd do something like this. You too. Go ahead, teach him a lesson. I won't say a word to stop you. The two men exchanged a glance, then nodded in confirmation. The taller one grabbed me by the collar. You hit my little brother and ran. He's still in the hospital, and now we, his older brothers, are here to set things straight. A fist crashed into my stomach. My whole face contorted as I doubled over, gagging reflexively. Makoto stepped back in alarm, relieved to have found a scapegoat. These guys weren't messing around. Makoto, let's not stay here. What if we get caught in the crossfire? It's just a beating. It won't kill him. What matters is making Makoto feel good about this. Sure, Makoto said. That flower shop we like just got a new variety in. Let me take you there. Good thing Alicia was sharp. Flowers were appropriate for the occasion. Clinging to Makoto's arm, Willow said cheerfully, I want to pick out a bouquet for you, as an early celebration for winning that award. She didn't even like flowers. Too delicate. They withered too easily. She never understood how Alicia could enjoy putting them around the house. But if Makoto wanted to go see them, how could she say no? Their silhouettes grew smaller as they left, hand in hand. Meanwhile, I had already taken 5 or 6 hits. Fighting back wasn't an option. 2 fists are no match for 4. And anything I said would fall on deaf ears. Willow and Makoto, truly a pair of snakes and rats. Selfish, ruthless, disgusting. Pa. Tough guy. Still not saying a word after all that. Finally, they stopped. I wiped the blood from the corner of my mouth. Chapter 5. I'll pay 5 times the hospital fees. 5 times. That much? The shorter man's eyes darted around the room, taking in the lavish furnishings. 5 times isn't enough. He stopped his companion, who was itching to keep going, and waved a hand dramatically. You hit my brother yesterday, and you had the nerve to insult him, said he was blind and didn't watch the road. We want emotional damages too. We're asking for 2 million. That was extortion. 2 million could buy a small hospital. Swallowing the metallic taste of blood in my mouth, I paled and replied coldly. Extortion? If I give you a cent, we can settle this in court. The word court struck a nerve. In the end, they backed down, for 10 times the original medical fee. After receiving the transfer, the 2 men grinned from ear to ear and left cheerfully. Their retreating silhouettes overlapped with the images of Willow and Makoto in my mind. Anger darkened my eyes, and my grip on the phone turned deathly tight, knuckles white. Willow loved Makoto. Her entire heart belonged to him. That meant anyone could be discarded, even her own husband. To Willow, I was nothing more than a tool to summon when needed, to discard at will. Who knows, maybe in her mind, letting me take the fall for her crush was some sort of twisted honor. By the time I'd changed my clothes, the men I'd sent had already successfully copied the footage from the car's dashcam. That evening, I came home from the office reeking of medicinal balm. There was no bleeding, but the deep bruises and swelling across my body throbbed constantly. The only thing dulling the pain was the strong-smelling ointment. Dragging my feet, my eyes betrayed the exhaustion I carried. Is he still not back? Could he have ended up in the hospital? They were hitting pretty hard when I saw them this morning. Relax. It's not that serious. Willow said that, but deep down, she wasn't sure. Still, lying in Makoto's arms, enveloped by his warmth, she couldn't bring herself to get up. Your sister's husband. Makoto hesitated. George just lost his wife. Are we being too cruel? His face even showed a flicker of guilt, though it was shallow. Clearly fake, but if they didn't do this, Makoto would lose his chance at the award. After a brief pause, Willow wrapped her arms around his waist, her voice gentle. He has money and influence. He can handle this on his own. We don't need to feel guilty. We don't need to feel guilty. Just a few light, casual words. Rage surged again within me. I crushed the last shred of hope in my chest. My face turned to ice, my eyes filled with pure disappointment. You're right. Makoto exhaled, relieved. He was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. This won't be a big deal to him, but it would have ruined me. We had no choice. He leaned back on the couch with a faint smile on his lips. So what if George came from money? He still had to take the beating for Makoto. Besides, Willow added, you're his brother-in-law. Him stepping up for you at a crucial moment, he could just see it as doing family a favor. With just a few lines, she convinced Makoto, and herself, she could explain everything later. Once things settled down, no need to talk about him anymore. Even a starving dog knows when to come home. He'll be back. She pushed herself up and kissed Makoto on the lips, mimicking scenes she'd once secretly observed. She fluttered her lashes like butterfly wings, then slowly closed her eyes. That soft, shy expression made Makoto's heart skip a beat. He had thought Alicia was acting strange after Willow's death, but clearly, he'd just been overthinking. Alicia had simply become even more his type. Watching all of this, I clenched my teeth so hard my jaw ached. It felt like my heart had been torn into shreds. Just as I burned with fury, my phone vibrated in my pocket. 3 short buzzes. I remembered what my father had mentioned earlier about the arranged match. I unlocked the screen. The reagent arrived. It's really useful for my research. Young master, you rejected my confession 2 years ago, but this time, you made the first move. How about a date? Tell me the time, I'll come pick you up. Chapter 6. I walked straight back to my room, startling the couple in the middle of a kiss. You're back. Why so quiet? Makoto looked a little annoyed at being interrupted, but quickly covered it with a smile. Sorry, George. Alicia and I are just that in love, you get it, right? Bang. The bedroom door slammed shut behind me. I didn't reply. Makoto's smile froze. His face darkened almost instantly. After trying to coax me for a while without success, Willow came to my door while Makoto was in the bathroom. The door was locked. She called my name several times, but no one answered. However, she could see a faint shadow moving under the crack. This was new. I had always been completely obedient to her, never once making her feel ignored or unimportant. Something about this made Willow feel oddly unsettled. Today wasn't ideal, I know, she began, trying to be patient, mimicking her sister's softer tone. But your brother-in-law's job is at stake. If he's blamed, he'll lose his award. I'm here to apologize. If this had been before, she wouldn't have said even a word, let alone apologize. But she wasn't Willow anymore. You wanted that wedding photo, right? I'll make sure we get it done soon. She offered a few more comforting words, but her tone was starting to show signs of irritation. She didn't notice Makoto standing at the other bedroom door. By the time Willow returned to their room, Makoto had already gone to bed. If not for her ovarian rupture, they probably would have had another intimate night. Left with no choice, she turned off the lights and lay down close beside him. Night fell into silence. Careful, hushed footsteps moved across the floor. To my face, it was one kind of excuse. Behind my back, it was sweet talking and appeasement. The wedding photo, this so-called final wish, was nothing but bait. What George really wanted was to provoke Alicia's attention. His wife had died, and now he was eyeing her identical twin sister. Shameless. George had already made a small breakthrough tonight. There was no doubt he'd only get bolder from here. If you want to steal my Alicia, Makoto held a gasoline can, his usual gentlemanly face now twisted with hate, then you deserve to be taught a lesson. He poured the gasoline across the room, centering it around my bed. The pungent fumes quickly filled every corner of the space. Once he was done, he grabbed a piece of clothing. Click, the lighter sparked to life. My eyes snapped open at the sound. I turned my head, just in time to see Makoto holding a flame to the cloth, and the floor reflecting the glossy sheen of the fuel. The smell hit me hard. My mind instantly grasped what was happening. Ugh, my head, get away, I shouted. Makoto hadn't realized I was awake. He didn't dodge fast enough, and I rammed into him. He crashed to the floor, his forehead slamming against it with a loud crack. I looked back. The piece of clothing had fallen into the gasoline, and tiny flames had just started to crawl up the fabric. I lunged to stomp out the fire, but before I could reach it, a brutal kick slammed into my back. Wham! I crashed into the side of the bed. Pain exploded across my spine. My vision blurred from the agony. Die! Makoto roared. The plan was nearly complete. Makoto saw his chance and charged forward, determined to kill me. If you're going to burn me alive, don't think you'll be walking out of here in one piece either. I locked eyes with him, fury surging through me. This absurd hatred, this insane arson attempt, how could Willow have fallen for someone like him? Makoto's fist came at me again, my neck strained, veins bulging as we locked in a brutal fight. Blow for blow, we wrestled like cornered animals. Flames licked upward nearby, and the temperature in the room started to rise dangerously. I spat a tooth onto the floor, blood pooling in my mouth. Makoto's face was emotionless, Cold. He grabbed a chair and swung it straight at my head. Don't fool yourself into thinking Alicia actually cares about you. Makoto sneered. She's only doing what's best for me. A twisted grin curved his lips. Pathetic, isn't it, brother-in-law? You really didn't know. She never liked you, not even a little. His words froze me for a second, just long enough to miss the chair. It smashed into my shoulder with a sickening crack, the pain exploding like an electric shock. My entire left side went numb. Already wounded, I collapsed, curled up, back arched, gasping for breath. Makoto. The door burst open. A wave of oven-like heat hit Willow as she entered. She took one look at the flames spreading across the room, and dumped a bucket of water straight onto Makoto. Come with me. Hurry. My mind slowly came back online. I struggled to lift myself. Then I saw it, Willow grabbing Makoto, pulling him out without even glancing in my direction, leaving her ex-husband behind, surrounded by fire. I knew then, I was on my own. Clenching my jaw, I forced myself through the ring of fire. By the time I reached safety, one of my legs was badly burned. 6 years of marriage, and she couldn't even spare me a bucket of water. But at this point, my heart didn't waver anymore. There was no pain left to feel. As my strength gave out and I collapsed to the ground, I faintly heard a voice in tears. Don't move, your wound is bleeding so badly. If anything happens to you, I won't survive either. I'd rather die as a fugitive couple than live as a widow. Chapter 7. How could I bear the thought of you becoming a widow? Makoto held her tightly, realization dawning far too late. He'd lost his mind. What the hell was he thinking? Getting into a fight with me in the middle of a burning room. George. Tears in her eyes, Willow marched toward me, face twisted with anger. Did you do this on purpose? Just because we pushed you to take the fall, you had to get back at Makoto. I hadn't even regained my strength yet, and she was already lashing out like I'd been the villain all along. Catching the surprise flicker across Makoto's face, I let out a bitter, breathless laugh. Too short to be anything but a scoff, but in Willow's ears, it was pure mockery. She exploded. I personally apologized to you. I explained everything. Why can't you let it go? Holding a grudge over something so minor, how petty can you be? You're such a despicable little man. Personally apologized. Did she think her apology was some kind of royal blessing? That's right, I said calmly, chin slightly raised. I am that kind of person. I wasn't about to back down. Not anymore. The dashcam footage, destroyed. Right, bit late for that. I pushed myself up, wobbling on my injured leg, bone-deep exhaustion weighing me down. I just wanted to end this quickly. I have a backup copy. So here's the deal. Either we take that wedding photo now, or I send it straight to Makoto's company leadership. Makoto's face turned paper white. He'd invested everything into that award. A single scandal could ruin him completely. Alicia, he began, adopting a pitiful expression like he was being cornered by fate itself. Just agree to it. I can handle this small humiliation. They couldn't risk the award being jeopardized. Weighing the pros and cons, Willow, furious though she was, could only grit her teeth and accept. The photography studio provided elegant outfits, which made things easier logistically. I chose a simple, classic black suit. The dark fabric helped hide the blood soaking through my pant leg from the burn. A wedding photo was supposed to be joyful, but the staff all huddled nervously in a corner, casting glances at the three of us. The men with the serious leg wound looked the calmest. The woman, uninjured, wore a scowl, and the other man, he looked like he wanted to kill someone. When it's done, Willow growled through clenched teeth, delete the footage. I hit send on a message to my match from the arranged marriage, then locked my phone screen. Of course, once the photos were taken, the past would be behind me. Next time we crossed paths, I wouldn't show mercy. Ma'am, can you give us a little smile? Relax. Why are you asking for so much? Willow snapped. It's just a photo. Take the damn picture already. Don't push your luck. Makoto's face darkened. He regretted not tying me up before trying to set the room on fire. This one's no good. We need a retake. In the preview, Willow's brows were furrowed, and her gaze had drifted toward Makoto on her left. What's wrong with it? Makoto shot back. You said you just wanted a wedding photo. There was never any rule about facial expressions. I know what filthy thoughts you're hiding, George. But Alicia, she'd never. The footage. I interrupted him calmly. Makoto's rant came to an abrupt halt. He shut up. This one's no good. The smile's too forced. This one's worse. The smile's fake. This one, no smile at all. The photographer's palms were sweating. The bride wouldn't cooperate. The groom demanded perfection. If this dragged on, they'd run into the next customer's appointment. Finally, the photographer snapped a candid profile shot. This one's good. The words had barely left her mouth when, smack, a sharp slap rang out, echoing through the studio. Willow's voice followed. That was from my dead sister, taking wedding photos with her husband. Shameless. How righteous of her. I steadied myself, stunned for only a moment, before laughing out of pure exasperation. After today, I'd have nothing to do with them ever again. Without hesitation, I turned and kicked Makoto square in the chest. Chapter 8. George, have you lost your mind? Makoto hadn't been prepared. He stumbled backward and knocked over the camera. The sudden movement caused his wounds to reopen. Blood began seeping again. Willow quickly helped him up. We can't delay, we're going to the hospital. Beep beep. 2 honks pierced through the studio's glass front. A sleek luxury car rolled to a stop at the curb, and the window slid down to reveal a stunningly beautiful woman. She watched as Willow helped Makoto into a cab. I turned and walked the opposite way. You made me come pick you up at a wedding photo studio, how tragic. Anna joked as she gently pressed the gas and merged into traffic. I didn't reply. A moment later, something glinted and flew out from the car window. It was a silver ring, the wedding ring I'd found after Willow's funeral. Take me to the hospital first. You're hurt? Anna tightened her grip on the steering wheel. Where? Pretty much everywhere. I squinted, the pain in my body robbing me of the energy to talk. The rest of the ride was silent. We arrived at a hospital owned by the Sue family. Anna took me straight through the VIP channel. She picked up the diagnostic report, her eyes widening in disbelief. This bad? Her gaze flicked down the list of injuries, stopping at the most serious one, second-degree burns on the leg. The bottom of my suit pants had been cut open. Raw red and white muscle showed beneath. Anna's fingers trembled as she held the report. You look like hell. I chuckled softly, nodding. Won't happen again. Spending time with Anna was surprisingly comforting. You didn't keep the evidence. If we went straight to the hospital, surely that meant I'd preserved evidence of the attack. No grudge should go unaddressed. When I nodded again, Anna finally exhaled. Can I see it? No, I said. It's a little too bloody. The injuries were serious, and I didn't get treated in time. The doctor says I'll need surgery, so I'll have to rain-check our date, and I still had the audacity to say I didn't seek treatment in time. Anna gave a helpless sigh. You'll make it up to me later. She waved dismissively, then clicked away in high heels to call the doctor. The longer I delayed, the worse my injuries would get. She had all the time in the world to make me pay her back later. Less than 10 minutes later, the red light above the door lit up. Hey, did you get the picture I sent earlier? From now on, no Sue-owned hospital is allowed to admit these 2 people. The surgery went smoothly. Meanwhile, Willow and Makoto had already tried 3 hospitals, coincidentally, all under the Sue family's umbrella. This has got to be George's doing. What does he want from us? Makoto lay in the backseat of the car, guiding them to yet another hospital. It hurt, but as long as Alicia was looking at him, that was all that mattered. George trying to steal her? Laughable. Don't be mad. Willow coaxed. If I'd known George was this petty, I would have confessed everything the moment those guys showed up. There's a small hospital about 11 kilometers away. Let's go there. The next morning, just as the sky began to lighten, Anna walked into my hospital room carrying millet porridge. The surgery had ended close to midnight, and I was still under anesthesia when she decided to let me sleep. You're not staying in the hospital? Her elegant brows furrowed as she suddenly stood up. Why not? What's so important that you have to check yourself out? Her tone might have been annoyed, but the concern in her eyes was unmistakable. Warmth spread quietly through my chest. I set the porridge aside. It's something important. Nothing's more important than your health. So much for coming to visit him early. She'd just gotten mad. Anna turned to leave, her long black hair curling behind her in a graceful wave. Going home, to plan our wedding. My parents had only helped coordinate the engagement. From the banquet to the ceremony, I would handle everything from here. There's no rush. But her steps paused for a beat. Back turned to me. She walked to the window, hiding the blush rising up her cheeks. Once the moment passed, Anna composed herself again. I looked into Willow. She said quietly, she dies, and you're already rushing to marry someone else. You're not just doing this to prove a point to someone, are you? Of course she would ask. She was a Sue, sharp-minded, raised to analyze every angle. No wonder my parents were so pleased with her. No. One word. Steady and sincere. She relaxed. I wasn't a man without decency, and like Anna, I had no desire to lie, not even to protect myself. All right, then. She lifted her chin. Your body. Your choice. If you insist on leaving, I can't stop you. Chapter 9. Home. This time meant my parents' house. I was just saying yesterday how much I missed you, and now here you are today. Mom beamed with delight as she gently tucked a stray strand of hair behind Anna's ear. A cane. What happened? Leaning on a cane, I stood quietly while all 3 of them looked me over from head to toe. Leg burn. Seeing I wasn't in the mood to elaborate, my parents tactfully dropped the subject. I was an adult. They trusted I could take care of myself. 3 days later, everything was ready for the engagement. Both families were scheduled to meet, just a formal gesture. No more cane. Anna was the second person to arrive at the venue. I had only used the cane after surgery to make walking easier. She caught my eye and gave a playful smile. I sighed, This woman never missed a chance to tease me. 2 hours slipped by quietly. As the engagement banquet drew to a close, 2 formal announcements were released. Media outlets quick to follow the news pounced immediately. In under 30 minutes, headlines across all major platforms reported the joyous union of Miss Sue and young Master Wong. What are you thinking about? The room was thick with post-intimacy warmth. Willow sat at the edge of the bed, body relaxed as she leaned against Makoto's chest. It was odd, George hadn't returned. Based on what she knew of me, after getting the wedding photo, I should have fallen deeper into grief, dragging myself through each day like a lifeless shell. If I'd refused to let it go because of the injuries, she had even planned to use the hospital rejections to shut me down. But there had been no reaction, nothing. Oh right, maybe we should move George and your sister's things into the storage room. He hasn't come back in days, maybe he's finally moved on and doesn't want to return to a place full of pain. Impossible. Willow rejected that thought immediately, but as soon as the words left Makoto's mouth, she found herself second-guessing. The more she thought about it, the more irritated she became. How dare George move on from this? I'll call and check. What if we move everything and he comes back? That'd be a waste. With Makoto's nod, Willow dialed the familiar number. Sorry, the number you've dialed is currently unavailable. She tried again and again. Over a dozen calls, same result every time. Makoto tried calling from his phone. Still nothing. Maybe he blocked us, though we can't be sure. Willow stared at her phone in disbelief. She kept dialing, and eventually even began messaging mutual friends in a panic. Do you have to get through to him? Seeing the hesitation in Makoto's eyes, her heart suddenly sank. No. I can't believe it, she muttered. She finally put her phone down and forced herself to stop spiraling. Maybe he's just asleep. It's late, after all. So many betrothal gifts. In the warm light, Anna rested her head on one hand, raising her brows in surprise. The Sue family's dowry is no joke either. We can't let our gifts pale in comparison. The engagement had gone smoothly. We had already picked out our rings and started living together. This villa, which I had purchased years ago, would be our future home. I hung a few of Anna's blouses in the wardrobe, then shut the doors and pushed the empty suitcase into a corner. I'm going to shower. The sound of running water echoed from the bathroom. A few minutes later, Anna opened the door without knocking. Meeting my eyes, she smiled and held up a tube of ointment. This lady is feeling generous today, she teased. If you refuse, that's your problem for being ungrateful. Hot water poured down, steam curling through the bathroom like fog. In the haze, we shared our first kiss. Chapter 10. Are you awake yet? Go check the trending topics. George is going to remarry. The message from a friend landed like a grenade exploding on water. Willow sat bolt upright in bed, all traces of sleep gone in an instant. She clicked into the trending list in disbelief. The third entry featured keywords about the Wong and Sue families. The article was mostly filled with congratulatory fluff, but at the bottom was a slightly blurry photo. In it, amid a festive banquet scene, George was wearing gloves and, very intimately, feeding shrimp to Anna. Reporters were always known to exaggerate. A single photo didn't mean much. Just as Willow was replying to her friend, a second message popped up before she could even catch her breath. It's real. They officially announced their engagement. What? Flames of fury burst through her chest. Willow furiously raked her fingers through her hair and slammed her phone onto the bed. Her mind was a storm of chaotic thoughts. She couldn't help but grab the phone again, digging up the engagement announcement and reading every single word. An arranged marriage. George actually dared to betray her. At breakfast, Makoto casually mentioned, I was right, George really is moving on. His fiancé's already been decided. The emotional balance Willow had just managed to restore instantly cracked. Is that so? She asked stiffly, mechanically picking up her chopsticks. His sister-in-law dies and just a few days later he's getting remarried. If that doesn't scream petty, heartless, and shameless, I don't know what does. We should keep our distance from now on. Best if they never saw him again. Who knew if George still had lingering feelings for Alicia? All right. Willow lowered her head, but her thoughts couldn't have been more different. She had to see George. So what if he made an announcement? George had loved her for 6 years. If he were capable of moving on, he'd have done it long ago. This couldn't be real. It had to be for show. She pulled every string she could think of, connections, favors, backdoors, but none of it worked. Someone she once could see anytime had now vanished completely. At the villa, Anna stirred awake, the faint red marks on her neck still visible. Wedding shoot. Did you book the photographer? 2 o'clock this afternoon. At exactly 2 p.m., we arrived at the wedding studio. A strange, almost surreal feeling crept into Anna's mind. You've done wedding shoots before, haven't you? You're not going to make a habit of me picking you up from bridal studios, right? The corner of my lips curved into a faint smile. I looked directly at her, gaze steady, meeting my eyes. Anna turned away abruptly, almost like she'd been burned. All right, let's go inside. We're on the clock. This studio was renowned for its bridal photography. We had booked both an indoor and outdoor shoot. The indoor portion was much simpler. We stood before the backdrop, both smiling faintly. Just as the shutter clicked, slam. The studio door burst open. It wasn't yet time for the next scheduled client, and the photographer turned, confused. What are you doing? A single glance from the sidewalk, and Willow had finally found the man she'd been searching for in vain. What enraged her even more was where she'd found him, a bridal studio. Why haven't you come home? Why didn't you answer your phone? It was clearly someone they knew. Sensing the tension, the photographer's expression darkened. Ma'am, unless you're here with a booking or business inquiry, I'm going to have to ask you not to disrupt my studio. His time was valuable. He had clients to serve. Willow ignored him completely. In a rush, she stormed over and grabbed my arm. You said you wanted a wedding photo with me, to honor my sister. So why are you taking pictures with her now? To get married, obviously. I brushed her hand off with a firm flick. Anna leaned her head on my shoulder, tilting it slightly. What else would it be for? That was not the answer Willow wanted to hear. Chapter 11. It's fake, right? All of this is just an act, isn't it? Who the hell has that much time to fake an entire relationship? Anna rolled her eyes. Say something. Why aren't you answering me? Is it because I'm right? You still can't let go of my sister, can you? She stood there, aggressive and accusatory. I couldn't help but find it absurdly funny. I said nothing, not because I was guilty, but because I didn't have time for this nonsense. Whether I remarry, whether it's for real or not, none of it has anything to do with you. What I am curious about is, what right do you have to question me? Willow was stunned, unable to get a word out, but the fire in her chest only burned hotter. Something felt wrong, like the situation was slipping beyond her control. She'd always had the final say, but this version of George felt like a stranger. I'm Willow's sister, she finally stammered. That was the only remaining tie between us. Realizing this, Willow's nails dug into her palm, a creeping dread spreading through her. What's wrong with asking on behalf of my late sister? Didn't you love her? Love? She had the nerve to use that word. I held Anna's hand and returned to stand in front of the camera. That was in the past. Now, you're clearly overstepping. No. Willow refused to believe it. How could he not love her anymore? Their intertwined hands stabbed at her eyes. Shock filled her gaze. You bought engagement rings, she asked, her voice trembling. Then she turned sharply to Anna. It was you. You did something to him, didn't you? Made him go along with this fake show. Sensing the situation spiraling, the photographer signaled for the staff to help clear the room. But just then, another person walked in. I was wondering why I couldn't find you. Turns out you were here. Makoto walked in carrying shopping bags. His eyes scanned our outfits. By the way, did you get the photos from that last bridal shoot? If you want to chit-chat, do it at home. I'm not here to waste time. I had no interest in engaging with them. The contrast in my tone caught Willow off guard. Her breathing grew heavy. You're marrying her, and you don't want your sister-in-law's belongings anymore? Her belongings? I looked at her coolly. You mean the stuff that burned up in that fire? Her face stiffened. If you've got free time, why not focus on your research instead? Most of it had burned, but she knew a few things had survived. If you keep pushing it, the Sue family's bodyguards won't be so polite. Big sisters meddling in their brother-in-law's affairs? That wasn't a thing, even by the wildest social standards. Anna, quietly observing, began putting the pieces together. Theories she had dismissed before now clicked into place. Willow's lips moved, but no sound came. She wanted to believe it wasn't true, but she had no real argument. Aren't we supposed to go check out the cake shop? Makoto's expression turned sour. Let's go. Willow didn't want to leave. She couldn't even explain why, what exactly she wanted to demand, to argue. Alicia, don't hesitate. Let's go. Back in the car, they hadn't driven off yet. Snapping out of her spiraling thoughts, Willow turned toward the driver's seat in confusion, only to meet Makoto's furious eyes. Her mind raced back over everything that had just happened. Panic made her force a smile. What's wrong? That's my question. Makoto shot back. You see George and suddenly you can't move. Who exactly is your husband? Makoto is my husband. She wanted to scream. To someone passing by, it might look like you were defending your sister's memory, but to everyone else, you chased George all the way to his bridal shoot. Looks a lot more like you're still in love with him. In love with George. Chapter 12. It was ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. She loved Makoto. Shoving aside the emotions she shouldn't have had, Willow exhaled sharply. Sorry, Makoto. I've always loved my sister deeply. I just lost control of my emotions for a moment. Makoto's anger faded a little as she leaned against him. This was the Alicia he recognized. The Wang family is powerful and wealthy. George is good-looking too. Makoto paused before adding. It would make sense if you fell for him, but we are husband and wife. I don't love him. I love you. Regret washed over her like a flood. How could she have abandoned Makoto, running off to confront George like that? George is despicable. I feel nothing but disgust for him. Makoto gently patted her back, as if the thought had reminded him of something. He set fire to the room just to get revenge. What if next time he tries to kill someone, people like him never come to a good end? Makoto still had scars from that fire. Had Willow not arrived in time, the consequences could have been fatal. The hatred in her heart swelled again. Willow sneered. Without the Wang family's support, he'd be stepped on by everyone. The phone rang, cutting through their back-and-forth barrage of resentment. It was her lab assistant. Hello, is there a breakthrough in the experiment? No, Professor Liu. You need to get to the lab immediately. Something's gone very wrong with the reagent. The recent research project was crucial, developing a targeted drug formulation with significant academic and commercial value. Willow had published it under Alicia's name so that she could take it over herself. Having abandoned the identity of Willow, after rounds of review and approvals, the project had just gotten on track. All eyes from the upper departments were on it. Any mistake would spell disaster. Willow rushed to the lab. Normally scattered researchers swarmed the hallway. Professor Liu, thank God you're here. One more minute and it would have been too late. Are we even continuing the experiment? The Su family's reagent has already skipped ahead of our current phase, and leadership is full of praise. What do we do now? Will the whole project be handed over to the Su family? You said this research was an extension of your own private work. How did they get it done before us? You told us to work hard for results while secretly giving the data to the Su family. Are we just stepping stones for you? We deserve an explanation. The first few questions were still rational. By the end, they were accusations, emotional and furious. Some had been working day and night for this, now they wanted answers. Willow raised her hands in a calming gesture. Please, everyone, stay calm. I've only just found out. Give me a little time to look into it. She shut the door to her office, her face tight with anxiety. Tell me everything that happened, in detail. The assistant scrambled to pull out the relevant documents, sweating so hard he didn't even bother to wipe his forehead. Once Willow understood the timeline, she rubbed her temples. Leave me alone for a moment. But the assistant didn't move. Her expression darkened. She slapped a stack of papers down on the desk with a loud bang. I'm not running away. You'll get a proper explanation. Frightened by her outburst, the assistant quickly backed out and shut the door behind him. The moment she was alone, Willow locked the door from the inside and pulled out her phone. She called her best friend. How did the Su family get their hands on the early stage data? You said there were no loose ends. Su family, what are you talking about? Maria sounded confused on the other end. So the news hadn't reached the general team yet, but upper management already knew. There was no room left to maneuver. Then, like a spark in chaos, a thought leapt to the front of Willow's mind. Could that person have ratted us out? Chapter 13. On the other end, Maria quickly caught on and lowered her voice. It's hard to say, but even if someone talks, they don't have proof. That was the key. She had no evidence, and every step of the project had been approved with stamped documentation. Her documentation. I've got a way. No matter how the Su family managed to present the final version of the reagent, it was theft. Wait, theft? The Su family stole our research data. Seriously? When the internal notice went out, Willow's colleagues, many of whom had worked alongside her daily, were stunned. Willow spoke louder, adding a tone of regret. I never shared the data. Only leadership was allowed to review it. How the Su family obtained a finished product is questionable, to say the least. Some believed her, others, not so easily. Under those skeptical gazes, she remained composed. I've already reported the issue to leadership. Everyone, don't panic. Focus on any other projects for now. I'll provide a detailed update as soon as possible. As the project lead, Willow had always been the central figure. Keeping everyone calm was second nature to her. By midday, the sun hung high in the sky. Inside a private dining room at a renowned Chinese restaurant, plates of aromatic food filled the table, but the people seated weren't particularly interested in the meal. Anna idly poked at her rice with her chopsticks. You don't have anything to say to me? Across from her, I raised an eyebrow in mild surprise. If there's something you want to know, just ask. Being direct was her trademark. She set down her chopsticks and began twirling her engagement ring. Was that woman today not Alicia? No, that was Willow. She'd heard about the death of Miss Liu, so it was Alicia who had died in the accident. A fake death. Interesting. What did she want? Makoto? I gave a subtle nod. I pictured the moment at the bridal studio when Makoto dragged Willow away. Lifting my glass of fruit wine, I took a quiet sip. Some documents had already landed in my inbox last night. It was almost time to let the world see the truth. Greedy people always want everything. Anna mused, blinking slowly, her tone teasing. Unlike me, I focus on loving one person at a time. A flurry of blush-colored bubbles floated toward me. I played along, nodding seriously. From now on, you'll be allowed to love me openly. At 3 p.m., a notice was posted on the company's internal bulletin board. It was the results of the annual awards. Makoto saw his name at the top and stared at it 3 times, barely believing it was real. Congratulations. You're clearly talented, totally outperformed everyone. His heart soared from the praise. Makoto gave a modest bow. Thank you, sir. It's your guidance and support that made this possible. 3 years ago, he had to follow others, scraping for recognition. Now, he had finally made it, but all afternoon, he felt restless, like ants crawling under his skin. Finally, just before the end of the workday, he was approached by the executive assistant of a senior director. Director Law wants to see you. There are a few matters that need clarification. Excitement tightened every nerve in his body. He straightened his spine, head high, and strode confidently toward the elevator. Even as he hit the button for the top floor, he never noticed the assistant's uneasy expression. Knock, knock, knock. Come in. Have a seat. Makoto stepped inside with a perfectly polite smile, sitting down and waiting quietly. You've been selected as this year's award recipient. That speaks volumes about your consistent work ethic. It's my honor to bring value to the company. Makoto replied smoothly. Standard opening niceties. Every important meeting began this way. Now it was time to get to the real subject. Chapter 14. Start by reading this email. The screen was turned toward him. Without a second thought, Makoto lowered his head to read. The email detailed serious misconduct. This person had not only profited unethically while representing the organization at public events, but had repeatedly crossed legal boundaries, dancing dangerously on the edge of the law. Which unit does this person belong to? With such a record, they should be immediately dismissed, he declared righteously, but the director across from him remained silent, eyes dark and unreadable. A growing sense of dread gripped his chest. Makoto lowered his head again, carefully reading each line. Nothing stood out. He read it a third time. His palms were now clammy with sweat. The trip to the school in the southern rural area. I remember only you and one senior staff member were sent, correct? Memories rushed back. He recalled vague mentions of that visit in the email. Makoto's brow furrowed deeply. If the senior staff member was exploiting resources for personal gain, then this is even more serious. It must be investigated thoroughly. Naive, ambitious, but not careful enough. The director said nothing, only sighed and pulled the computer back. You can go. The sense of unease gnawed at Makoto as he stood. Something wasn't right, and there's no need to come back. What? Even though he tried to keep his voice low, the tremor at the end was unmistakable. Something inside him dropped, like falling into a bottomless pit with no warning. You really can't recognize your own mess. The words hit him like a hammer to the chest. He bent forward sharply, gripping the edge of the desk with bone-white knuckles. This is a setup. I've never done anything like that. The director only waved a hand. His eyes were weary, but sharp. There's no use arguing. You're terminated. Security entered and began dragging Makoto from the office. He thrashed, yelling the entire way. He had sacrificed so much to climb up. How could it all come to nothing? Everyone at the organization received the same email, murmured someone who had congratulated him earlier. A bright future shouldn't be built on shortcuts bought with favors. Who did this? Who sent it? Makoto broke free for a second and grabbed a colleague by the shoulder, eyes wild. But deep down, he knew, whoever sent it would never expose themselves directly. It was a wasted question. Security tightened their grip on his arms and dragged him out the door. Let go of me. I've been framed. I demand to speak to the director. It only takes one blink to fall from the heights to the depths. It was late when he got home. The house was dark, empty. Alicia wasn't back yet. At this hour, Willow would usually be home. But now, her lab was tense with confrontation. 5 people had come from the Sue family. Strictly speaking, only 2 mattered. Anna brought 3 bodyguards. Accusing someone of theft is no small matter, she said coldly. If you can't produce evidence, I'll sue for defamation. Evidence? Willow scoffed. She hadn't known it was Anna behind the reagents development until the Sue family showed up. The Sue family had deep roots in the medical field, constantly competing for funding and resources. They had always been her biggest rival. Now Anna was engaged to George too. Willow couldn't stand the sight of her. I've been developing this research for over 6 months, and now the Sue family suddenly produces a completed version. Are we really supposed to believe that 2 people just happened to have the same idea at the same time and pursued the same experimental path? Chapter 15. Why not? Are you saying other people's brains aren't allowed to come up with the same ideas as you? Anna yawned lazily as one of her bodyguards pulled over a chair. She sat down with practiced grace. What a bold counterattack. Too bad you have no evidence. I have cards to play. Miss Anna, We just got a call from Claude. He's caught up in the fallout and won't be able to make it. Claude, the leader who had always spoken highly of Anna, was also the one assigned to investigate the plagiarism accusations Willow had made. Let's go. Staying here is a waste of time. I'd rather be at home with George. Tossing her hair back, Anna passed by Willow with a smirk, leaving one final barb. Too many guilty deeds will always come back to bite you. A faint red mark peeked from the side of her neck. Willow's face turned pale, then flushed in rapid succession. When she walked out of the lab, exhausted and dispirited, a familiar car came into view. Makoto had come to pick her up. Her heart gave a small leap. She quickened her steps. What's wrong? Makoto, you look terrible, she said softly after getting into the car. Concern etched into her expression. Were you unhappy with the award results? She was already thinking through comforting words. I was fired. Fired? You got fired? Willow's voice rose with shock. Why? The piercing question made Makoto roll down the window in frustration, trying to catch some air. The loss of his job had left him engulfed in anxiety and confusion. All those emotions eventually funneled into one furious certainty. It was George. Him again. How long is he going to keep this up? Willow's voice shook with rage. One dirty trick after another. He's insane. He wants to destroy you. Is that it? The fury boiled over like a volcano. First the Sue family ruined her research. Now George had cost Makoto his career. They're trying to crush us. But what if George knew she was actually Willow? Would he still go this far? That thought suddenly sent adrenaline racing through her veins. Her heart began pounding harder and faster. The seed of confession, of telling him the truth, took root in her mind. Restless and growing. George would regret it. He would break down in tears. Consumed with guilt, he'd cancel his engagement to Anna just to win me back. There's George's car. Makoto's voice pulled her sharply back to reality. Willow straightened up and looked ahead. Not far ahead, just close enough. Even fate seemed to be helping her. Her fingers had just touched the door handle when something clicked in her mind. She froze. George wasn't alone. He was here to pick someone up. Anna was still with him. The sky was dark, but the streetlights illuminated the scene clearly. Anna strolled around the car with effortless grace, leaning down at the driver's window. A cigarette tip hovered at his lips. In a swirl of smoke, she laughed, lazy and radiant. Then a long, strong hand reached out and cupped the back of her neck, gently drawing her in through the open window. They kissed, long, deep, and unhurried. Willow couldn't see past the tinted windows, but she didn't need to. She knew. When Makoto glanced at her, she quickly rearranged her face into a mask of mild irritation. My work's hit a snag too. Anna's just using her ties to the Wong family to target me. We can't let them get away with it, said Makoto, teeth grinding audibly. Those with nothing to lose fear nothing. Let's go back and discuss our countermeasures. Chapter 16. Willow already had a plan. She couldn't resist the urge to meet me in private, but had been struggling to find the chance. Claude was tied up with important matters, and the situation was at a deadlock. Did something happen? We'd mostly been communicating through messages since the incident. This was the first time Maria had called. When the call connected, Willow's expression momentarily turned uneasy. Nothing happened. I just wanted to tell you that, from now on, we should keep our distance. They had been through a lot together. No one could claim to have completely clean hands. Now that George had made his move, none of them could match him, even as a group. You want to play it safe? Willow felt chilled to the bone. Maria, are you abandoning me? My father already knows about this. I have to follow his orders. That's all. Goodbye. 2 beeps ended the call. Willow's face turned stormy. As expected, she'd likely be blocked soon. George, Anna. She would make sure those two lived to regret everything. The wedding date for the Wong and Sue families was approaching. By all logic, this should have been the perfect chance for Willow to see George. Aren't you trying to get Claude to give you an answer about your research? He's free today. You're welcome. Anna's call came out of nowhere. Willow wasn't stupid. She knew it was a ploy to get her out of the way. But Claude had only informed Anna the last time he couldn't make it. He was clearly leaning toward Anna. If she didn't seize the opportunity now, her 6-month research direction would be wasted, and the people in the lab waiting for her report would probably revolt. George is getting married today. Aren't you going to see him? There's something more important at the lab. Willow smiled as she kissed Makoto at the corner of his lips. Take me there. While she was firmly presenting her demands to Claude, Anna was already dressed in a wedding gown, arm in arm with me. I checked the lab records a few days ago. The results came in today. Guess what I found? One look at her face and you could tell this wasn't good. She was clearly coming to confront me. I searched my memory for anything lab-related, trying to remember what it could be. You handle it however you want. Handle your own mess. I'm not your housekeeper. Anna shot me a glare, lifted her gown, and turned away. You've got 3 days. If you can't sort it out, you're sleeping on the couch. I chuckled, scooped her up, and walked under the spotlight. Just the couch? Looks like you've gone soft. With the officiant's bold and solemn vows, They were now husband and wife. Flashes from the cameras lit up endlessly. By the next day, those pictures, along with a flood of congratulatory messages, would dominate the trending searches. The lab. Willow had thought pinning the theft on Anna would be difficult, but the truth was, she had underestimated just how hard it would be. She spoke passionately, her mouth dry from all the talking, but Claude remained completely indifferent. He even started dozing off. With a single line, "You have no evidence," he shut down everything she'd said. He added, "I have other appointments in half an hour. If you're just going to repeat yourself, don't waste my time." If this path was blocked, what was she supposed to do? Use Anna's vague excuses to brush off the lab staff? That would be like pacifying a bunch of children. No evidence. Then she would make evidence. A single Anna wanted to make her bow her head at the lab. No way in hell. Chapter 17. As the door swung open, a faint yet probing gaze hovered over Willow. She ignored it completely and saw Claude off at the entrance of the research institute. "Don't worry, everyone, there's finally a lead." With that, Willow ducked back into her office. Without Maria's help, she had to rely on her own network to track that person down. As long as that person gave the nod, most of the battle would already be won. By the time dawn was breaking, a message popped up. A slow smile crept across her lips. The next day, Willow arrived at the airport right on time. On the ride back, the back seat of the black car now held one more figure, Professor Liu. Willow had barely stepped through the research institute's doors when her assistant called out to her, "If it's urgent, come talk in the office." The assistant, visibly anxious, quickly followed. She didn't dare speak about this in front of anyone else. "What's so urgent?" "There's been a change in research funding, and not just a small one, it was massive." She had tried calling several times, but no one picked up. She was nearly in a panic. Still reeling, the assistant watched as Willow calmly uncapped her pen and pulled out a file. "I anticipated the funding shift. I'm well aware of the situation," Willow said. But funding at the institute wasn't something you could just shift at will." "It's fine. Go do your work. While you're at it, let everyone know the results they've been waiting for are coming soon." Still dazed, the assistant closed the door, standing outside blankly for a moment. That was it. Everything was fine. In the office, the ink from Willow's pen had spread across the paper in a messy blot. She hadn't made a move for some time. She tried hard to keep her emotions in check, but it was useless. Her hand trembled as she tore up a few documents in frustration. All the research projects had been funded by the Wang family, and George had withdrawn everything. People may leave, but companies don't just vanish. Before hearing the news that George was going to remarry, she had once gone to my company looking for him. Back then, the answer had been, "Mr. George is not available." This time, maybe he wasn't there either, but Willow would wait. She would wait until George came to see her. "What now? Even your CEO's sister wants to stop me." The receptionist lowered her head slightly. "Apologies, but the CEO's wife has instructed that you're not allowed into the company." When the instruction was given, she hadn't yet been his wife, but after yesterday, she was. "Anna doesn't want me in." Willow let out a cold laugh. She would make Anna see clearly who George truly favored in the end. "I have something extremely important to discuss with him. You can't afford the delay." The CEO wasn't in the office. Seeing Willow's haughty expression, the receptionist didn't say more and let her through. As soon as she stepped into the elevator, the receptionist called the CEO's assistant. Ding! The button light turned off, and the elevator doors slid open slowly. Willow headed straight for the CEO's office, her footsteps echoing down the hall. Just as she reached the door, it opened from the inside. She came face to face with my assistant and froze for a moment. Was George in his office? "What are you doing here? Where is he?" Clutching her purse tightly, Willow glanced around the office. No sign of George. In a company this big, he had actually left Anna alone in a room filled with sensitive partnership documents. That kind of trust was infuriating. "Since you showed up uninvited, you should start with an explanation," Anna said coolly, fully assuming the role of the woman of the house. Willow thought, if George hadn't forgotten who I am, would this woman ever have the chance to act so high and mighty in his company? She took a deep breath, forcing her emotions down. Her expression hardened. With contempt, she said, "I have something to say to him. I don't care where he is. Tell him to come see me now." Chapter 18. What an arrogant tone, sounded almost like a command. Anna leaned back, her body naturally sinking into the soft cushion of the chair. "He won't see you. If you have something to say, I'll pass the message along." There was nothing Willow wanted to say to Anna, a woman who was, in her eyes, a soon-to-be disgraced loser. With arms crossed and a frosty glare, Willow repeated coldly, "Tell him to come out. What I have to say, he'll regret not hearing it for the rest of his life." Coming here in person to ask for a meeting, this was something she rarely lowered herself to do. She still remembered how George used to follow her around like a clingy puppy. Rain or shine, he was always there to pick her up, drop her off. Whenever she wasn't working, All she had to do was turn around, and he would be right there. Then let him regret it. Anna said casually as she admired her freshly done nails. She tilted her chin. The door's behind you. Don't let it hit you on the way out. You. Who gave you the right to make decisions for him? So quick to snap after just a few words. Anna suddenly got the urge to toy with her a little. How about this, if you pinch your nose with one hand, point forward with the other, and spin in place 3 times, I'll call George for you. It was obvious mockery. Willow's perfect teeth were practically grinding into powder. I don't agree. Then you don't even get to speak to him, let alone see him. You've got 10 seconds to decide. After that, I'll call security. Seeing Anna sit there calm and smug, clearly expecting her to humiliate herself, only made Willow angrier. But Anna wasn't wrong. If she kept blocking her like this, she wouldn't even catch a glimpse of George's shadow. You'd better keep your word. When George finally came crawling back, begging for her love like before, she would make Anna pay a price far beyond public disgrace. That would just be the beginning. Remembering Anna's humiliating demand, Willow bit her tongue. She wished her glare could turn into knives and skewer Anna on the spot. Her legs felt like they were made of lead. But seeing the woman grow visibly impatient, Willow had no choice. With stiff, robotic movements, she followed through with the ridiculous demand and spun 3 times. By the time she was done, she was fuming. Her pride had been stomped on, and a suffocating anger churned in her chest. That was hard to watch. Don't do that again, Anna commented coolly. Under Willow's furious gaze, Anna casually dialed George's number. She put the call on speaker. The familiar ringtone filled the air. Willow stepped to the right side of the desk, eyes fixed tightly on the phone screen. The call connected, and a voice came through from the other side. Still picking flowers. Got any more requests, babe? The leather of Willow's handbag was suddenly crushed in her grip, making loud creaking noises. Even when she and George were married, he never used pet names like that. It wasn't that he didn't want to. It was Willow who thought such things were cheesy, and had strictly forbidden him from saying them. But now, hearing George call another woman something so sweet, something so intimate, she couldn't stop herself. George, come to the office now, she burst out, unable to hold it in. Silence fell on both ends. 3 full minutes passed, no response. Afraid he might hang up, Willow added quickly. I have something I need to say to you, face to face. I'm busy. Just say it. Busy. He was busy picking out pretty flowers for Anna. Willow's anger surged, her jaw clenched tight, but her next words came out sharp, laced with a bitter satisfaction, as if she were finally detonating a long-planted bomb. I'm not Alicia. The one who died was her. Chapter 19. A flicker of surprise passed across Anna's face. She curled her lips, unimpressed. She'd expected something interesting, but it turned out Willow had just lost her composure. The panic and regret Willow had anticipated from the two of them never came. That absence struck a chord deep inside her. I'm Willow. I'm not dead, she declared. All of this, it was to fulfill my sister's final wish. She wanted me to stay by Makoto's side in her place. You're not Alicia. That's right, Willow practically shouted, her voice cracking from the force. The embarrassment of losing control briefly clouded her mind, but she brushed it off. Skepticism was normal. George had always been cautious, but once his doubts faded, guilt and remorse would surely follow. I can prove I'm Willow. You know I have a mole behind my ear. After my sister died, I went to the hospital. No need. I already know. He believed me. I knew the day Alicia was buried. The joy of triumph had barely bloomed when it froze into a stiff, awkward smile on Willow's face. Her heart nearly stopped as fear crept over her. She staggered back a step in disbelief. He had known all along that the one who died was Alicia, and still, he chose not to expose her. Then everything she had done over the past weeks. I can explain. You have to believe me. There were reasons for all of this. Willow scrambled for excuses. Surely it was because George knew her too well, and that's how he'd seen through the disguise. But before she could finish the thought, the call went dead. George had hung up. Was that the result you were hoping for? Anna said lazily, clearly bored now. She waved dismissively. I won't keep you. Someone, please escort Professor Liu out. 2 bodyguards had been waiting outside. At Anna's command, they stepped up, one on either side, to show Willow out. If she didn't go willingly, they'd carry her. She walked out like a ghost, got into her car, and sat there drained, as if all emotion had dried up. George really didn't love her anymore. He had withdrawn funding, refused to see her, and just like Maria, he had cut her off completely. Her handbag accidentally slipped and fell to the floor, its contents scattered across the seat. Among them, a small square velvet ring box stood out. Willow opened it. Her blank gaze finally shifted. Inside was the wedding ring she once shared with George. Now, just pulling it out felt like a bad joke. But the thought of Anna and George living happily ever after made her stomach turn. She couldn't accept that. Set up a press conference for me as soon as possible, she instructed her assistant. I'm going to publicly accuse Anna of stealing someone else's research and passing it off as her own. Her assistant had always been efficient, one of the few things Willow still trusted. At 2:30 p.m., under a sky as dark as ink, with winds signaling a storm, the conference began. In front of a crowd of reporters with cameras pointed like cannons, Willow stood tall and solemn, holding the microphone with purpose. Those in the scientific community know that our team has spent over half a year developing this reagent. While the Su family has long been a prominent name in the medical field, it does not excuse Miss Su, Anna, from stealing preliminary data and claiming our work as her own. This kind of scientific misconduct should be condemned and rejected by the entire industry. She paused to catch her breath, scanning the crowd as they reacted, sensing the rising tension. The early phase experiments were conducted by myself and Helen. Due to personal reasons, she chose not to continue with the follow-up research. That was when Anna deliberately approached and obtained the early data. Words alone aren't enough. Please, take a look at this video. Chapter 20. The video was only 30 seconds long, with large sections obscured in black. From the angle, it was most likely recorded from a corner of the room, partially covered by what looked like fabric. The footage faintly revealed a clean and solemn lab setting. Anna crept in stealthily, moving quietly while others slept, and powered on a computer. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, pages flashing rapidly on the screen. This video has not been tampered with in any way, nor is it a product of digital manipulation, Willow declared firmly. I'm offering it freely to anyone who wishes to verify its authenticity. With that, she passed the microphone to a woman with soft, curly hair. She was the one shown sleeping in the footage. After stepping away from the project, I returned to my original position. The woman, Helen, explained. It was during that time Miss Su showed up. I blame myself for trusting too easily and letting my guard down. That gave her the opportunity. With a quick summary of events, Helen then looked directly into the nearest camera lens. I stand by every word I just said. With my job as a guarantee, I now ask Miss Su to appear in person and give the public a proper response. The woman they were calling out was, at that very moment, peacefully asleep. I had received news of the press conference long before it began. Gently tucking the blanket around Anna while she napped, I slipped on my headphones and opened a live stream of the event. The atmosphere at the venue had reached a boiling point. Anna's absence would only fuel the media frenzy once it hit the news. After a moment's thought, I purchased a trending topic. If the storm was coming, it might as well be a full-blown explosion. Everything unfolded exactly as expected, right up to the end of the conference. When I finally took off my headphones, Anna stirred and turned in her sleep. She clearly wasn't tired, but watching her peaceful expression, I lifted the blanket and climbed into the bed, taking up the other half. The room grew dimmer after I shut the laptop, and before I knew it, I drifted off too. Anna had had a few drinks earlier that day, so she slept especially long. By the time she woke up, the clouds outside had turned soft shades of pink and gold, peaceful and beautiful. Taking the dessert the housekeeper brought, Anna sat down and opened a playback of the press conference, murmuring to herself, even a video. They had really gone all out to cast her as the villain in front of the world. In the video, the Anna lookalike moved sneakily, but wore no hat, no mask, nothing to hide her face. The body type and facial features were incredibly similar. It would be hard for anyone to deny the resemblance. Finding such a convincing actress in such a short time. Willow had really gone the extra mile. After observing the footage carefully, Anna nodded with certainty. It was hard to tell the difference. What do you think? Does she look like me? She walked over, laptop in her arms, and showed me the video. Not really. I glanced up from my files, gave it a quick look, then returned to my work. Sneaky, dumb, not Anna's style at all. If Anna really did something like this, she'd do it in the most open and untouchable way possible. With the Su family behind her, there wasn't much she couldn't do. Anna beamed, clearly pleased that I knew her so well. She fed me the last piece of her dessert with a little grin. At the research institute, Claude stormed in. His footsteps hurried. Where's Alicia? She had gone and held a press conference without approval, inviting reporters on her own initiative. I'm here, boss. Willow had anticipated this reaction. She handed him a cup of tea and began her explanation, unhurried and measured. We have both testimony and physical evidence. I acted out of pure frustration. And I admit, yes, I didn't report it beforehand. But this is 6 months of hard work. So many colleagues have poured their hearts into this lab. I did it for them. I had to get justice. Chapter 21. Claude was about to launch into a reprimand, but Willow's counterattack stopped him cold. He sipped his tea, clearly displeased. Acting impulsively like this, you're not some green rookie who just joined the institute. Even if she had acted out of emotion, the so-called evidence still needed to be properly examined. I was impulsive. Yes, but the boat's already been built out of the wood. What's done is done. If I've wronged her, I'll take full responsibility, alone. Claude fell silent for a moment, frowning. The Sue family hasn't responded yet. That was practically an admission of approval. Suppressing the triumphant smile threatening to climb up her face, Willow instead adopted an indignant tone. Not a word. Which was strange. Anna would have definitely gotten wind of the situation. But silence was silence. It only gave the news more time to ferment. If things got out of hand, the one who'd have trouble cleaning up the mess wouldn't be her. Even if George had connections that reached the sky, he still couldn't save a person whose reputation is in ruins. She thought she could go up against our Alicia. She should have known her own weight first. Outside the window, a breeze drifted past. This was Makoto and Willow's first candlelit dinner. The press conference had come together thanks not only to her assistant, but also to Makoto's behind-the-scenes help. Smiling, Willow filled his wine glass, her cheeks tinged with red. I didn't do anything extraordinary. I'm just lucky to have you by my side. Having vented her frustrations, Makoto was in high spirits. He pulled her into his arms and planted a loud kiss on her cheek. They say when husband and wife are of one mind, they can cut through iron. This is how it should be. As the wine took hold, Willow wrapped her arms around his neck, her sense of direction gone with the buzz. No one who crossed her had ever come to a good end. If George didn't love her, then let him die alone. So much for newlywed bliss and honeymoon sweetness. Thinking back to a media report she once saw, Willow scoffed coldly. She'd see to it that Anna ended up in prison. Her ability to think clearly only lasted a short while. By the end of the night, both she and Makoto were too tangled up in wine and lust to care. The next morning, Willow opened her eyes in a bedroom littered with clothes. Her head was pounding, her back sore, her limbs aching. By 10 a.m., headlines accusing heiress of the Sue family caught plagiarizing scientific research had already skyrocketed to the top of the trending list. A torrent of criticism and insults followed. Not only did Sue Corp's stock price plummet, Wong Corp took a hit as well. A notification popped up on her screen. When are you sending the money you promised? Willow exited the app and began typing a reply. The lab's funding was still up in the air. Where was she supposed to find a huge sum of money right now? Besides, Anna was still hiding like a turtle in its shell. If things didn't go through and the actress flipped on her, she'd end up with nothing, a total backfire. I've done everything I said I would. Whatever happens now isn't my concern. Pay up. After half an hour of back and forth, the person finally stopped pestering her. Any updates? Makoto had also woken up. Willow shook her head. We're trending, but the Sue family hasn't responded. They must be freaking out behind the scenes. They're just laying low because they have no idea how to handle it. The two exchanged a smile, their eyes flashing with the confidence of having the upper hand. But the longer they waited, the higher the risk of something going wrong. After a brief discussion, they decided not to give the Sue family any breathing room. I need to see what the higher-ups think first. If she called the cops without notifying anyone, Claude would tear her apart, and that could jeopardize her future projects. After the press conference, Claude, normally elusive, was practically living at the institute, calling the police. You're being a bit hasty. Just as she'd expected, permission was not granted, but Willow didn't hesitate. The conference happened hours ago. I can wait, but my colleagues at the institute can't. Chapter 22. You've really thought this through. We both know how serious it is to involve the police. Not only had she thought it through, Willow could hardly wait. Claude twisted his fingers, his white eyebrows wrinkling like fuzzy caterpillars. We can't act rashly. I'll talk to Anna myself and relay your accusations to her. But who knew how long talking would take? Days might pass with nothing to show for it. How about I talk to her instead? Willow offered with an innocent smile. I've got nothing else to do. If the conversation fails, then we can proceed with the police. How sincere that offer was, well, that was anyone's guess. Calling the cops on me? A calm but firm female voice cut through the air, reaching their ears before she came into view. Willow turned, stunned. Claude had already been on the fence. This course of action was nearly settled. But right on cue, Anna showed up. She really knew how to make an entrance. Considering how closely she was being watched, there was no reason her assistant would have stopped her from coming. She walked in to see Claude directly. As Anna entered, a quiet crowd began forming behind her, trailing in slowly. Everyone was waiting for a clear response, unwilling to leave, even if it meant avoiding Claude's gaze. I originally came just to say a few words, Anna said as she reached the doorway, but hearing talk of the police, that really threw me. With exaggerated drama, she patted her chest, then turned to leave, without even stepping fully into the room. But her parting words rang clearly in everyone's ears. The Sue family will hold a press conference tomorrow at 9 a.m. sharp to formally respond. Professor Liu is strongly advised to attend. We've got plenty of seats, everyone is welcome. A response. Willow's lips curved slightly. Tomorrow's press conference. She'd be listening very carefully. Anna's true purpose had been to speak privately with Claude, who'd have thought she'd end up overhearing something far more valuable. She said she's calling the cops on me. Anna burst into the office like a rocket, slamming both palms onto my desk and staring down at me. What a pain in the ass. You gave me that formula just to screw me over, didn't you? As the prized daughter of the Sue family, pampered and praised her whole life, no one had ever even threatened to call the police on her. This felt like a slap across the face. Didn't I tell you to wait until I stepped in? Told her not to waste the trip, went in one ear, out the other. I sighed. Just rest. The timing's almost right. I'll take care of it this time. Clean and simple. Then it's in your hands. The press conference is at 9 tomorrow. Anna flopped onto the sofa, tugged a small blanket over herself, and closed her eyes. Sleep slowly tugged at her. In a half-dream state, she turned her head and murmured, "Would you consider scar revision surgery? One of my aunts is back in the country. She specializes in it." The hand I had on the mouse paused, just for a moment, then resumed moving. The long silence stretched on. Anna stopped waiting for a reply and let herself drift off. The scar on my leg had always been there, a constant reminder of brushing death. Sometimes in the middle of the night, I'd wake up gasping, drenched in cold sweat. "I'll do it once this whole mess is over," I'd once said. Let the past stay in the past, permanently. This press conference was twice the size of the last one. I was overseeing it personally. Why aren't any of the Wang or Sue family elders attending? Reporters who had shown up early to fight for seats were now gathered in the audience, whispering among themselves. Word is, Mr. Wang said he'd handle it himself, no need for anyone else. No extra seats had been arranged on stage. Willow, blending into the crowd, heard every word clearly. They say Mr. Wang spoils his new wife even more than the last one. Tell me about it. Just the betrothal gifts alone were insane, at least this much. The speaker flashed a hand signal indicating a huge number. Willow's eyes flicked toward it briefly. Expressionless, she quietly pressed the brim of her hat lower. The assistant beside her noticed her hand, shaking ever so slightly. Chapter 23. Anna's here. With that shout, all eyes turned to the stage. Anna didn't come alone. The person following behind her gave Willow a jolt of familiarity. Professor Liu. This is your partner from the early stages of the experiment. You wanted both eyewitness and evidence present, right? I didn't back up that audio recording on my phone, Anna's assistant remarked casually. With those words, Willow's brain buzzed. Her blood ran cold like she had fallen into an ice pit. Hadn't she paid that woman to leave the country? Just a few days ago, she'd claimed to be abroad. Wait, Professor Liu, where are you going? The conference is about to start. Willow shoved past the crowd, heart pounding wildly. There were security guards at the entrance. There was no way out. She ran. Her chest thudded painfully like war drums being pounded. Hands trembling, she locked herself inside a restroom stall. Her knees buckled, she nearly collapsed to the floor. She pulled out her phone and frantically dialed. "Why are you here? I paid you. I'll pay you more, right now. Leave. Don't say a single word." Her roar echoed violently in the empty restroom. Meanwhile, on stage, the curly-haired woman stood tall like an unsheathed sword. Gone was the hunched, timid posture. She was commanding and sharp. "Willow, you're as disgusting as ever. No matter what mask you wear, I'd recognize you anywhere from that face alone. Your reckoning has come. Hello, hello." The call ended abruptly. Willow, shaking with rage, hurled her phone to the floor. She had been played. Damn it. A shrill feedback squeal from a microphone pierced through the wall. Panicked, Willow snatched her phone back up and called Anna. Her whole future was about to unravel. Pick up, why isn't she answering? As the screen flashed to the call interface, Anna glanced down into the crowd. No Willow, but her assistant was there, looking clearly distressed, standing awkwardly in the corner. So she ran off. Pathetic. Seeing Anna's eyes shift, I followed her gaze and caught the caller ID on her phone. "Give it to me." I took the phone from her and slipped it into my pocket, eyes forward, unmoved. Call after call, no answer. Desperate now, Willow redialed, this time to Makoto. "Makoto, this press conference cannot start. You need to stop it. Think of something. Anything." Back at home, Makoto jolted upright in bed. "What happened? What's going on?" "No time. Just do something." Her voice cracked. Choked sobs followed. But what could he do? He couldn't even get inside. He had no power to fight me. Just then, a voice rang out on stage. "Good afternoon. Over the past few days, Alicia Liu, Professor Liu of the Research Institute, has made public accusations against me for academic theft, accusations that have remained at the top of trending searches. This press conference has been arranged specifically in response. Alicia, say something. I'm driving to the venue now. Just tell me what happened." It was already too late. Willow clutched her head, face pale, curling into herself on the bathroom floor. Tomorrow's top headline wouldn't be "Sue heiress arrested." It would be her, Willow, paying off a witness to falsify evidence. And not just that, there was more, much more. She shivered, her entire body consumed by despair and fear. Makoto's call was still connected, but suddenly, another call popped up. The number was all too familiar. With just a glance, Willow latched onto it like a drowning woman finding driftwood. She hung up on Makoto and picked up the new call, crying uncontrollably. George, I was wrong. Please, have mercy on me. Don't take it this far. Where are you? Come to the press conference. His tone was cold, strictly business, like he was issuing a formal memo. Please, don't do this. You're going to destroy me. There was no need to hear the rest. I dragged her number back into my block list and adjusted my sleeve cuffs. I wanted Willow to suffer thoroughly. Chapter 24. The sun climbed higher in the sky. Those were the key points I picked out based on what the public is most concerned about. I'll address each one in turn, but before that, I'd like to ask, is Alicia here today? A few scattered higher-ups glanced around. Then someone responded, she's not here. Let's wait for Professor Liu. Logically, her absence should be next to impossible. 1 hour passed. The crowd exchanged looks, mouths dry from the wait. That's her assistant, Liu's assistant. Someone shouted. Looks like Professor Liu only sent her assistant. Anna smoothly picked up the cue. Let's not waste any more time. What I'm about to say may shock you. The video, after forensic analysis, was confirmed to depict an event that had actually occurred. The question I want to raise, Anna continued, could someone with similar features, using makeup, look convincingly like me? And more importantly, did I actually steal any data? Naturally, that would require witnesses. A reporter spoke up at just the right moment. Why was she there? Was she also sent by Professor Liu? Anna passed the mic without hesitation. The reporter was a familiar face. I vaguely remembered him as one of my own company's people. All the rhythm control players had taken their places. Anna discreetly flashed a thumbs up toward the men behind her. What? You were paid off before? Someone gasped from the crowd. It wasn't just reporters down there. Voices rose in heated waves. If you say you were bribed before, how do we know you're not being bribed now? After years of managing the research institute, Alicia had built a public image of being gentle and kind. A few younger fans, clearly loyal supporters, huddled together, fuming. Your words don't hold water anymore. We want evidence. Oh, there was evidence, but I had no intention of showing it. The mic landed in my hand. All eyes turned expectantly. Everyone, the time allotted for this conference is up. Please disperse. That's it. You're just going to talk and expect us to believe it. You've got to be kidding. What a waste of time. Who holds a press conference like this? It's a joke. I gently curled my arm around Anna's waist, intimate but still respectful. We've added another session at 1:30 this afternoon. The crowd's complaints were swallowed instantly. Eyes followed us as I led Anna toward the lounge. Around noon, Willow finally emerged from the restroom, walking like she might shatter at any moment. There were no guards at the doors anymore. She reunited with Makoto, collapsing into his arms, sobbing as she recounted everything that had happened. How could you let him catch such damning leverage? Makoto's expression grew darker and darker. They haven't said everything yet. There's still a chance to fix this. I need to find him. I have to find George. At this point, begging was the only option. It was almost deserted now. Makoto had to search for a while before finding someone who pointed the way. The lounge closest to the venue. Willow wiped her tears and sneaked her way to the room. She hesitated. Should she knock, or just push the door open? Before she could decide, a voice rang out behind her. What do you want? I was carrying a bag with 2 lunchboxes. My gaze was icy cold. George, Willow's voice trembled, her eyes already brimming. I'm sorry. I made a terrible mistake. I'm not asking for much. Just, for the sake of our past, please, show some mercy. Holding this matter over her was like holding a knife to her throat. What came next could easily decide the rest of her life. Makoto clenched his jaw and added, now with a pleading tone, we both regret everything. If you're willing to let Alicia go, I promise we'll never appear before you again. Chapter 25. Sow evil, reap evil. The words slipped coldly from my lips. That single, dismissive sentence instantly froze half the blood in Willow's veins. Even bringing up the affection we once shared, was that still not enough to earn forgiveness? But she didn't give up. If softening my heart was the only way, she'd try again, however many times it took. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I already explained everything to you. It wasn't without reason. Her voice cracked with sobs, full of grief. Can't you give me even a little time? Do you really have to push me into a corner like this? She lied too many times. After hearing her private conversations with her so-called friends, I no longer felt even the slightest shred of sympathy. We were selfish and short-sighted. That's why we upset you. If you're angry, take it out on me. Just, please, during the press conference this afternoon, don't say everything. I'm begging you. Hold back, I replied coldly. This press conference is to clear my wife's name, not to listen to a stray dog bark. Even while mocking, I kept my face expressionless, like wearing a mask no one could see through. No matter how hard they tried to guess what was beneath, the slander was mine. I did it. I wronged you. I wronged Anna. Alicia. A sharp pain sliced through the back of her knee, and Willow dropped into a half-kneeling position, her face contorted in agony. It's insincere to beg while still standing, Anna said, voice crisp. My husband's too well-mannered to lay a hand on anyone. I'm not. If you want to punish someone, punish me. Makoto hurried to help her up, refusing to let go, heart aching. Punishment. I let my gaze drift casually. For some people, a slap or a scolding is far too kind. Funny how quickly people forget the things they do in the middle of the night. Should we watch something together? Refresh a few memories? A cold chill crept up Makoto's spine from the soles of his feet. What video? How could you still have that? Anna had wondered why the arson footage from that night had never surfaced. Now she understood, it was being saved for maximum impact. Speaking of that video, Anna said with a smirk, I'm honestly impressed. Some people manage to combine pathetic and despicable so seamlessly. Eye-opening stuff. She had always been good at snark. It was clear now, we had dirt on Makoto, too. Willow, who had straightened her knees with effort, started to collapse again. I'll kneel for as long as you need. You can humiliate me however you want. But George, has everything from before really vanished? Is there nothing left at all? Everything from before. I let my mind drift back over the past few years. You mean the part where I couldn't get a kind word from you for 3 or 4 days at a time? Or the part where you were falling for Makoto? It was like thunder cracked overhead. Willow's soul nearly fled her body. How could George know she had feelings for Makoto? Her lips trembled, opening and closing like a beached fish. It's not what you think. Makoto, too preoccupied with the threat of the arson footage, didn't catch the subtext. Panic was etched across his face. We're family, he said. You remarried. Sure, but we're still family. Can't we just sit down and talk this through? There's no need to destroy each other like this. I replied calmly. Now you're getting it. I like destroying things thoroughly. It's efficient. My presence was so cold, so overwhelming, that Willow could hardly recognize me anymore. Under the suffocating pressure, Anna walked forward to take the lunchboxes from my hand. She hadn't eaten much earlier, she was nearly starving. This whole sob story tactic, please, just go home. Get some sleep. At least you'll rest well. Why drag yourself here just to be an eyesore? Chapter 26. If the accusation of stealing research data stuck, Anna's reputation would be all but unsalvageable. For an ordinary person, it would be a stain that couldn't be washed off for years, if ever. And for someone like her, it could completely ruin her. Anna never forgot even the smallest grudges, let alone one this serious. This wasn't something that could be forgiven lightly. When the truth comes out, it's like an arrow that can't be pulled back. And what's the point of kneeling if you don't mean it? What? Am I supposed to help you up myself? Willow's face flushed red, then pale. Her temples throbbed visibly. The press conference will proceed as scheduled. If you want to cry, kneel. Or talk about being one big family. Take it outside, yell louder if you want. Security will be here soon to shut you up. Maybe she finally saw the truth, my absolute coldness. The complete refusal to even consider her. Willow bit the inside of her cheek so hard the blood turned metallic in her mouth. Just like that, she was discarded, left on the sidelines. The lounge door opened. One tall figure, one shorter, about to disappear beyond the doorway. With every escape route closed off, Willow's rage boiled over. Anna, do you really think George loves you? Why should Anna get to stand tall in front of everyone, while she fell into the abyss? He was so cold to me in our last relationship, do you really think you'll end up any better? Once the novelty wears off, he'll grow sick of you, humiliate you. First I'm called a heartless monster, now I'm a cold lover. Still, I remained impassive, closing the door as if nothing had happened. But Willow stormed forward, forcing her way into the lounge. She raised her hand and slapped me across the face, her eyes red and voice shaking with fury. Your heart is made of stone. Good thing I never truly loved you, you're not worth it. I grabbed her wrist and threw her to the side. Still, she stood firm, chest heaving with rage. She refused to retreat. You claim you loved for 6 years, but that was just another lie. You're nothing but a selfish, ruthless bastard. Heartless and ungrateful. Anna kicked her out of the room, and Willow collapsed on the floor coughing violently. We're already strangers, Anna said coldly. And whatever kind of man George is, that's none of your business. Willow stared helplessly as the door shut in her face. Her heart felt hollow, utterly crushed. At 1 p.m., the internet exploded. Shenghong Corp, under my name as CEO, issued a statement. Due to Professor Alicia Liu's character misconduct, the company would permanently sever all ties with any business associated with her products. Within minutes, companies large and small reposted the announcement in support. Half an hour might not have seemed like much time to let things escalate, but by 1:30, Attendance at the press conference had more than doubled. I told everyone we'd have enough seats. Look at this place, it's packed. Well, the bait had been too good to resist. Chatter buzzed around the room, twice as loud as the morning session. Amid the noise, I stood calmly at the center of the stage. The statement we issued represents our company's official stance. It will not change. Now, regarding the allegation that my wife stole research, let me be clear, it is completely unfounded. This press conference would be decisive, efficient, and thorough. I instructed my team to display some old experimental drafts, dated years back. These documents show that my wife did, in fact, receive the data from an external source, but she was not the thief. The real thief is the one shouting the loudest. The Research Institute suffered repeated failures over 6 months, making no progress. And the reason lies right here, these few sheets of missing data. An experiment without these key inputs was destined to fail. The release of the final reagent was only made possible thanks to the one I sent to Anna, and the original researcher behind it, who refused to let the truth stay buried. Chapter 27. With tears in her eyes, the woman with curly hair took the microphone. It was the 3rd time she'd been so close to the truth, and this time, she could finally speak her heart aloud. The experiment was originally meant to be completed by me alone. Her voice, steady at first, began to crack with emotion. Anna felt a sudden wave of sympathy rise in her chest. What allowed her to surpass Willow in progress wasn't just her ability to patch up missing parts and push forward with chemical testing. It was also the detailed, accurate foundation laid down by this very woman. The crowd erupted. Journalists' hands moved so fast they nearly set their keyboards on fire. A Research Institute professor stealing another's hard work. Out of jealousy that someone from the Sue family had launched the final reagent first, she tried to smear others and ended up unmasking herself. A stunning reversal. This story was destined to go viral. My wife was wronged. The Wang family will pursue accountability to the very end. A poisonous presence in the industry must be punished. Exactly. Zero tolerance. Lock up this disgrace to the profession. Amid the shouting, Willow became a rat in the street, hated by all, reviled by everyone. At the tightly shut gates of the Liu residence, Makoto clung to her nervously. Alicia, let's run, please. If they left the country, no one would know who they were. They still had savings, they could survive just fine elsewhere. Makoto. The live stream continued on screen. Willow, sobbing, held him tightly in return. Everything she had built, all of it, gone. She was filled with hatred and regret. It's okay, I'm here. Let's just buy the tickets quickly. They purchased the next available flight. Makoto and Willow began packing in a frenzy. Let's go. We can't stay here. We'll wait at the airport. Suddenly, Willow's phone slipped from her palm and hit the ground with a loud, hollow thud. It's too late. She closed her eyes, despair washing over her. A single tear rolled from her eye down to her chin. Outside the window, 2 police cars had arrived. No one had noticed when. Spreading false information. Manipulating public opinion. Stealing scientific research. The charges against Willow were stacked high. The police had even formed a special task force to investigate the case. As for Makoto, he faced a charge of premeditated murder. With overwhelming evidence, there was no room left for denial. Not long after, both of them were arrested and thrown in jail. By the time word got out that Willow had committed suicide in prison, I had already undergone 2 surgeries to repair the scar on my leg. The results were immediate and incredible. With everything finally settled, I began planning our honeymoon. Halfway through the itinerary, Anna discovered what I was up to while using the computer in my study. The next morning, she appeared with 2 large suitcases. Her delicate makeup highlighted her striking features. Yours is packed too, Anna said, patting the sleek black suitcase. I didn't forget about you. We're leaving now. I already booked the first stop. There was something radiant and unstoppable about her. Bright, confident, full of life. My heart brimmed with indescribable emotion. I laced my fingers tightly through hers. Wedding bands pressed close, 2 hearts beating as one.